So I suppose it goes back about 10 years when I first started becoming interested in personal health in general. Um, for I basically had to cook for myself. The summer after freshman year, I was doing a study abroad in Europe where there are no dining halls. And of course, growing up, my mom had always cooked everything I ever ate. And so having to cook for myself, I started to inquire, well, what should I actually be cooking? And given my, for the first time in my life, insight into the entire journey of food from grocery store to kitchen to plate to mouth to, down the drain, so to speak. I could see how food affected me in a way that I hadn't been able to before. And then focused on the fact that, hey, if I eat these things make me feel better and those things make me feel worse. And I don't like feeling bad and I like feeling good. So I should try to do more of the things that make me feel good and less of the things that make me feel bad.
Hmm.
And that started, I suppose, this whole rabbit hole, as they say, of like trying to figure out what actually made me feel good and,
Mhm.
how to do more of that. And it turned out that all the things that were good were the types of things that were very traditional from the previous
Hmm.
definition.
And when you say so, in terms of just your personal journey, I'd love if we
Yeah.
could get like an example from your past for what you're talking about. And when you say feel good, my sense is you probably don't mean feel good in the sense of if I eat a Snickers bar, it tastes good. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
you
yeah. No,
probably mean
I
something
certainly do
else.
not. Yeah.
Yeah.
So to give a bit more clarity, if that's what to go down there. When I was a kid, I was not the most how people say they have a weak constitution, or some people say
Yeah.
or like
Yeah.
someone has a weak constitution or a strong constitution. I had a weak constitution. I always have seasonal allergies. I can never be more than a few feet from a box of tissues. I would often get nauseous and throw up and have
Hmm.
all sorts of stomach issues. When I was in eighth grade, I got the swine flu. That was the thing back then.
Hmm.
And then 2 weeks later, I got the regular flu. And it was like, what? Like, this is just happening. This shouldn't
Hmm.
be happening to supposedly healthy, able-bodied person. Um, so that was my childhood, right? It made me not able to do outdoor sports like most normal kids. There are a whole bunch of effects, positive and negative of this, but it was always something I lived with, and it was always something I just thought was like, oh, that's who I am. I never really paid much attention to it. I'm like, oh,
Hmm.
I
You
just
were just
need,
born that way.
yeah, I was born that way. I just need tissues all the time. I can't go outside in the spring, otherwise I'll die. That's just who I am. And so, one specific thing was when I first started cooking for myself in the aforementioned post freshman year sojourn in Belgium. I just stumbled upon the paleo diet and upon the recommendation to not eat rice. And so rice was something that I had eaten a ton of as a kid because my family's Italian, but very early on, my mom discovered I was gluten intolerant. And
Hmm.
so obviously that posed a big challenge for an Italian woman's culinary endeavors. So I just ended up eating a ton of rice as a kid, rice everywhere. Instead of
Hmm.
pasta, rice. Instead of bread, rice, 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 rice. And the paleo diet said don't eat rice. And I'm like, huh, that's weird. I'd never not eaten rice. So I'll try it. And within about 2 weeks of me doing this, my lifelong congestion, nose runny bullshit basically disappeared.
Hmm. And when you say rice, is this mostly white rice, brown
White
rice?
rice.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay, white rice.
And I'm not saying white rice is bad for other people by
Yeah.
any means.
Yeah. But for
Um,
you, that was
for
clearly
me,
a trigger.
yeah, and that was like what showed me like, oh wow, food is powerful. So like the whole idea of, oh, this is who I am, born that way,
Hmm.
was called into question because if I can like do a different set of things and experience a different set of outcomes, then clearly I'm not born this way. Clearly there's some like proximate cause of this, symptom. Um, and that was what sort of triggered the subsequent obsession with optimizing it at every step of the way.
And so, okay, so you have this experience with rice. Did you dig into? Do you have any sense for? Like, obviously, you just know empirically. Okay,
Yeah.
rice is a trigger for you with respect to like your allergies and stuff. Were you able to dig deeper and figure out what it was about the rice or anything like that?
You know, funny because this is like the first thing that ever caused me to question anything about health. I honestly have no freaking clue.
Hmm. Hmm.
I have no idea. Um, Brown rice is full of arsenic and other heavy metals due to the way that it's grown, and the fiber is very indigestible and causes digestive stress. Um, White rice is certainly a nutrient void food, uh,
Yeah, it's mostly
but
just carbohydrate.
it's mostly just starch. Yeah. But as far as I'm aware, I've never heard of anyone else talking about this or any other research about like rice containing something that causes some allergic reaction.
Hmm.
Um, I couldn't tell you. I mean, the best theory I have is that rice is not a widely consumed part of my particular ancestral diet,
Mm,
and thus maybe there's some incompatibility. There's a common old wives' tale, which is like if you eat too much of something as a kid, you develop an intolerance to it.
mhm.
I don't know if that's true. I doubt that it's true, but maybe in this case it happens to be true. Um, but yeah, I literally I could not tell you. I don't even
Yeah,
tell people
yeah,
not to eat rice because
yeah.
like it's just like, that's just a me thing.
Yeah, I think I don't think we know uh what's going on in detail in all cases for things like this, but one thing that is probably true to some extent for some people is that so on the one hand, we've got to explain why allergies are so common, why food allergies have become more common, but on
Hmm.
the other hand, why they can be very different. From you have this reaction to rice, someone else is allergic to peanuts, and so forth.
Hmm.
And it's like how is it that there's that kind of diversity, but at the same time, everything's drifting in the direction of more people have more food allergies.
Hmm.
And one plausible hypothesis there, at least in my view, is that, if as a child you've got, say, leaky gut or something like that for whatever reason, and you've got
Hmm.
particles of food that aren't being absorbed, they're actually getting in by other means because your gut has been disrupted. Your immune system can then detect chunks of food and start to react to them as if they were pathogens. And that simultaneously explains why, as a population, we're drifting in this sort of more and more allergy direction. But
Hmm.
there's this idiosyncratic nature to it where one person has a rice incompatibility, another person has a
Right.
nut sensitivity, and so forth.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of different potential causes. It's very interesting because, well, there's also intolerances and allergies, which are separate things as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my sister has like vaguely allergic to peanuts, but like why and why am I not? That's
Mm-hmm.
obviously the rates of that are increasing, and one of the things that we do know is that children who grow up on farms or in rural areas have lower rates of allergies than people who
Yes.
grow up in more sterile suburban urban environments. Uh, so one of the theories is that because it's similar to the autoimmune thing, it's like if there are not enough uh, innocuous foreign invaders, but foreign nonetheless, for the body's immune system to practice, getting rid
Yeah.
of, then
Yeah.
the body starts to turn on things that are not, harmful at all. And then we end up getting seasonal allergies and whatever else. So like the dirtiness of the rural world, in the sort of classical sense of the term dirty, dust, pollen, you know, dog hair, whatever. That strengthens a child's immune system. And it's worth noting that I did not grow up with pets. I grew up in a suburban house. My mom was a very neat woman, so the house was very clean. So there's definitely something to this, I believe. And further, leaky gut. Well, an interesting theory. There's also other issues going on too. For example, oral allergy syndrome. Like certain people, there are certain proteins in various plants that will just make their mouth itch. They're not allergic. They
Mm-hmm.
don't need an EpiPen. They're not going to the hospital. Um, you like some of the ones that are common in this are high in this protein are apples and carrots. Um, and there was a point in my life where if I eat apples or carrots raw, my mouth would itch. And it's literally instantaneous. It's not like it went through my gut first.
Mm-hmm.
And also noteworthy, if you cook them, then the oral allergy symptoms go away because the particular proteins that cause this are denatured.
Mm-hmm.
And so applesauce is fine, but raw apples would make my mouth itch. The thing is, I don't have that anymore.
Hmm.
And I've noticed that at times of like greater inflammation in my life, I will notice those types of things more. Same thing with stone fruits. So cherries and peaches and plums, they're all stone fruits. They belong to the class of fruits that basically have a pit that looks like a little hard brain with the wrinkles in it. Um, at some point, probably 3, 4 years ago, those fruits made my mouth itch in a similar way. And at this point, I can eat those things and my mouth doesn't itch. So it's a very the thing that I have to explain that is that inflammation in general is sort of like a health bar, like a video game sort of health bar.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have a finite amount of ability to deal with inflammation, and the more inflamed you are for whatever reason, and there's many causes of inflammation, the less able you are to deal with additional inflammation. Eventually, you like run out of inflammation capacity, and then everything causes some sort of like allergic reaction. So whether it's pollen in the spring, or stone fruits, or peanuts, or rice, or dog hair, um, or apples, or carrots, or literally could be anything, stress even. There was a point in time where I was in the early days of running the business where I was very stressed out for obvious reasons. and like I would just sneeze so hard that my shoulders and my neck hurt. It's like there's no reason for this. Like I live in the same house now. It's not
Mhm.
like it got cleaner or something. It's just
Mhm.
like you just get so stressed and there's just so much inflammation that you just can't deal with it.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of things that can limit or increase your capacity to deal with those influences. But yeah, it's certainly people are becoming less and less resilient as my personal story attests, which is unfortunate.